What if I told you that the words you speak are the very codes that program your destiny? What if the difference between winning and losing, between abundance and scarcity, came down to your vocabulary? Not just any vocabulary, the vocabulary of ultimate success. This isn't about grammar, this is about power. It's about the words you speak to the world and the ones you whisper to yourself. Because language is not just a communication tool. It's a declaration of identity. So if you're ready to shift from average to unstoppable, from doubtful to certain, buckle up. Because the words you choose will shape the life you live. Step one, living your greatest emotion. Every single word we speak carries energy. It's not just about vocabulary, it's about the emotional charge that comes with it. Think about it. When someone says, I'm furious, versus I'm a little frustrated, they're describing the same situation, but the emotional intensity is radically different. The choice of the word furious instantly spikes adrenaline, tightens muscles, floods the nervous system with stress. On the other hand, a little frustrated brings a tone of control, of calm, of momentary challenge, rather than emotional chaos, right? And this is the power of language. It doesn't just describe what we're feeling, it amplifies or diminishes it. The moment you label an experience, you give it meaning. And meaning is the birthplace of emotion. You could say he betrayed me and your heart will flood with rage, with hurt, with abandonment. Or you could say he surprised me with a tough decision. And now suddenly you're open, curious, maybe even empathetic. Same external event, two entirely different emotional realities, all because of the language you chose. Most people don't realize they're running emotional patterns, not because of what's happening, but because of the way they've been programmed to describe what's happening. Language becomes a habit, a reflex, a filter through which we process the world. If someone constantly uses words like disaster, terrible, impossible, they are subconsciously living in a world where everything feels overwhelming and permanent. But if that same person shifts to words like challenging, unexpected, or growth, using here the opportunity, everything softens, the brain responds, the body reacts differently, the emotional state changes. This is why people can be in the exact same situation and feel completely different. It's not their circumstances, it's the label they've attached to it. One person loses their job and says, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Another person in the same situation says, this is the opportunity I've been waiting for. The result? One collapses, one rises. Words are not passive. They are commands to the brain. They instruct the nervous system on how to feel, how to interpret, how to act. And the incredible thing is most people are completely unaware of the vocabulary they're using to program their daily experience. They've been conditioned to exaggerate pain and minimize power simply by the words they repeat without thinking. But when you start to pay attention, when you consciously choose words that uplift, empower, and create momentum, your emotional world begins to transform. It's not about lying to yourself or sugarcoating reality. It's about recognizing that you are the author of your emotional state. And your words are the ink. When you change the language, you don't just feel better, you feel different. You become different. Because language, more than anything else, is the tool that constructs the emotional architecture of your life. Step two, change your vocabulary, change your state. Every state you experience, whether it's power, peace, overwhelm, or joy, is triggered by three core elements: your physiology, your focus, and your language. And among these, language is the one people underestimate the most. But here's the truth. Change the words you use and you change the emotions you feel. Change the emotions and your entire state, mental, emotional, physical, shifts instantly. Most people walk around using words that weaken them without realizing it. They say things like, I'm exhausted, I'm depressed, I'm stuck. And each time they do, they reinforce that emotional identity. The body hears those words and responds in kind. Shoulders slump, breathing shortens, creativity dies. It becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. But if in that same moment, someone instead said, I need to recharge, or I'm in transition, the experience becomes something completely different. The words feel lighter, more hopeful, more open. They leave room for action instead of sealing the door shut. But this isn't about semantics. This is about emotional mechanics. Words carry meaning, and meaning creates your emotional state. You could describe a situation as a disaster or as a detour. One sends your brain into panic, the other puts you into curiosity and possibility. One triggers cortisol, the other can lead to courage. And it's not just the big dramatic words, even small shifts in everyday language can make a massive impact. For example, instead of saying, I have to, say, I get to. That one change alone can turn obligation into appreciation. I have to pick up my kids becomes I get to pick up my kids. Same action, completely different emotional state. Instead of saying I'm nervous, say I'm excited. Physiologically, they feel almost the same. Your heart races, your breath quickens, but the label you attach to it defines whether you're paralyzed or pumped. And the reason this works is because your brain takes language literally. It doesn't stop to ask whether it's objectively true. If you keep telling yourself, I'm overwhelmed, your brain will find more things to feel overwhelmed about. But if you start saying, I'm organizing or I'm gaining clarity, you activate a different part of your nervous system, one that helps you think more clearly and act more decisively. You're not lying to yourself when you change your vocabulary. You're reframing. You're choosing words that serve your goals rather than sabotage them. And over time, as this becomes a habit, your emotional set point rises. You stop living in reaction and start living in intention. Every word becomes a cue, a trigger, a lever that lifts you into a more empowered place. And once you master that, once you make the conscious decision to replace the language of limitation with the language of possibility, everything about the way you experience life starts to elevate. Step 3, leveling, is identity. The words you use to describe yourself are not just reflections of how you feel, they are declarations of who you believe you are. They shape your identity, and identity is the most powerful force in human behavior. You will always act in alignment with who you believe you are, even if it works against your goals, even if it causes pain. That's the power of a label. When you give yourself a label, you don't just create a description, you create a blueprint. You unconsciously begin building your life to match it. If someone constantly says, I'm shy, what happens? They withdraw. They avoid confrontation. They skip opportunities. Not because they are genetically programmed to be shy, but because that label has become part of their internal wiring. It's no longer just something they experience, it's who they are. And the moment something becomes part of your identity, you defend it, you protect it, and you act it out, even if it's limiting you. This is why changing your behavior without changing your identity almost never works. You can try new habits, you can use all the willpower in the world, but if deep down you're still calling yourself lazy or a procrastinator or not a leader, those behaviors won't stick. The identity always wins. The label always dictates the long-term pattern. You might say, I'm trying to lose weight, but if your identity is still, I'm a food addict, you'll sabotage your progress. If you say, I'm trying to build a business, but still believe I'm just not good with money, your actions will eventually collapse under the weight of that inner narrative. And here's the twist. Most of these labels weren't even chosen by you consciously. They were handed to you. Maybe someone told you when you were young that you were too sensitive or not that smart or difficult, and over time, you started to repeat those words. You didn't question them, you accepted them. And now, without realizing it, you're living out someone else's story as if it's your truth. That's the danger of unconscious labeling. It turns someone else's opinion into your permanent self-definition. But the beauty of it is, labels can be rewritten. You can rip off the old name tags and put on new ones. You can go from, I'm just an average guy, to I'm a leader in the making. From, I'm always messing things up, to I'm learning fast. From, I'm broken, to I'm rebuilding. And the moment you do that, not just once, but consistently, you start to feel different. You start to behave differently. You start to make decisions that line up with this new version of yourself. Not because you're pretending, but because identity follows language. The way you label your emotions, your habits, your strengths, your flaws, it all matters. I'm angry tells your body to tense up and lash out. I'm feeling disappointed right now. It gives you space to process and move forward. The same goes for roles. I'm just a mom versus I'm a creator of future leaders. I'm stuck versus I'm exploring what's next. Labels are mental shortcuts, and your brain treats them as command. Once you accept the label, your subconscious goes to work proving it right. It starts collecting evidence, filtering out anything that doesn't fit, and reinforcing behaviors that support that identity. It becomes a loop. Language forms identity, and identity drives language over and over again. And that cycle either builds your future or buries your potential. Step 4, upgrade from victimhood to power. There's a silent epidemic running through people's lives, and it's not physical, it's linguistic. It's the language of victimhood, the phrases that sound casual but are deeply corrosive. I can't catch a break. Why does this always happen to me? It's just the way I am. These aren't just complaints, they're identity statements dressed in helplessness. They reinforce a belief that life is happening to you rather than through you, and once that belief takes root, your power begins to drain from the inside out. Victimhood becomes a cycle. You experience a setback, you explain it with a disempowering narrative, you repeat that narrative, it becomes a pattern, then the pattern hardens into identity. And here's the kicker. Your brain begins to expect struggle, expect disappointment, expect failure, and because it expects it, it finds it. You're not unlucky, you're just loyal to a vocabulary that traps you in your past. The words you use determine whether you're responding to life or surrendering to it. Victim language focuses on blame, on what other people did, on what's out of your control. It centers the problem and magnifies it. It sounds like, they didn't support me, or this economy is impossible, or I've never had the right opportunities. And while those things might be true to a degree, the moment you give them power over your story, you've handed over the pen. You've allowed the external to dominate the internal. Now contrast that with the language of power, the vocabulary of ownership. It sounds like, I didn't create this situation, but I will decide how I respond. Or, I didn't get what I wanted, but I'm still in the game. It's not naive, it doesn't ignore reality, but it refuses to surrender sovereignty. When you speak with ownership, your body lifts, your chest opens, your mind sharpens, you shift from defense to offense. If you stop focusing on what was taken from you and start focusing on what you're going to build, the most dangerous thing about victimhood is that it's seductive. It offers comfort. It gives you a story where you're not responsible, and at first that feels like relief, but over time, that relief turns into stagnation. You stop reaching, you stop risking, you start settling, and then you wonder why nothing changes. It's because the language you've chosen has become a cage. Upgrading your language means rejecting phrases like, I have no choice, and replacing them with, what are my options? It means transforming I'm overwhelmed into I'm prioritizing. It means recognizing that even in the worst circumstances, you still have agency. Maybe not over what happened, but over what happens next. And that shift from passive to active, from helpless to decisive, is where transformation begins. This is not about pretending everything's fine. It's about refusing to let your vocabulary define you as someone powerless. Because once you consistently choose language that supports strength, resilience, and clarity, your actions follow. You start showing up differently. You ask better questions. You take bolder steps. And each time you do, you reinforce a different truth. Not that you're a victim of your circumstances, but that you are the architect of your future. Step 5, seek in outcomes, not obstacles. Most people live their lives with their focus fixed on problems, and the language they use reflects that obsession. They talk about what's going wrong, what might fail, what's missing, what they're afraid of. Their vocabulary is filled with words like impossible, too hard, not enough, or what if it doesn't work? And every time they speak in those terms, they reinforce a mindset that is centered around limitation. Their nervous system becomes conditioned to expect resistance, and their psychology begins to anticipate failure before they've even taken the first step. Speaking in outcomes is a discipline. It's the mental habit of directing your language toward results instead of excuses. It means asking different questions, using different phrases, and painting different pictures with your words. It's a difference between saying, I don't know how to fix this, and saying, what's the best possible outcome I can create from this? It's a difference between, I'm scared, I'll mess up, and how do I show up at my best in this moment? One sentence focuses your brain on the wall, the other focuses it on the door. And when you speak in obstacles, your vocabulary tells your mind to slow down, hesitate, doubt, and retreat. The words activate fear-based responses that narrow your thinking and shut down your creativity. But when you speak in outcomes, your language opens a space for possibility. It's as if you're programming your brain to scan the environment for solutions, to stay resourceful, to keep momentum alive. And this isn't just motivational fluff, it's neurological truth. Your brain operates on instructions, and language provides the code. So if you keep feeding it commands that revolve around problems, your perception literally filters the world through that lens. It's like putting on glasses that only let you see roadblocks. But if you shift your vocabulary to target goals, breakthroughs, and next steps, your brain starts scanning for progress instead of paralysis. This is why high performers speak differently. They don't ignore problems, but they don't dwell on them either. They acknowledge them, then immediately pivot toward the result they want. Their words revolve around, here's what we're building, here's what success looks like, here's how we move forward. They speak in direction, not description. And because of that, they move faster. They make better decisions. They stay emotionally resilient in the face of pressure because their words are pointed like a compass, not a complaint. The shift is subtle but powerful. Instead of saying, I'm not good at this, you say, I'm learning this fast. Instead of it's too late, you say, what's the next best move right now? Instead of everything's falling apart, you say, what needs to happen to get back on track? In each case, you're not denying reality, you're directing your focus towards something useful, something constructive, something that moves you. Language becomes your internal GPS, and if you let it spiral into negativity and problems, don't be surprised if you keep ending up in the same frustrating place. But when you train yourself to speak in outcomes, your words begin to stretch the limits of what you think is possible. They start to pull you toward action, clarity, and results. Not because you're lucky, but because you're intentionally building a mindset that refuses to get stuck in the fog of limitation. Step 60, daily incantations, reinforce destiny. Repetition is the mother of mastery, and what you repeat out loud with intensity and emotion becomes part of your nervous system. That's the secret power behind daily incantations. Not affirmations, which are soft and passive, but incantations, which are full-body declarations that involve your voice, your movement, your emotion, and your focus all working together to rewire your identity. When you speak with certainty, when you declare what you are and what you are becoming daily, consistently, with passion, you begin to condition your mind and body to live in that reality before it even exists. Your brain doesn't know the difference between something vividly imagined and something real. If you speak the same phrase with intensity every day, your nervous system starts to believe it. You begin to show up differently, not just because you're hoping for change, but because you programmed yourself to expect it. You speak the words, your physiology changes, your posture adjusts, your energy rises, and that combination creates momentum. You go from waiting for confidence to feel real to generating it from the inside out. Most people start their day by reacting. They open their phone, they scroll, they absorb other people's agendas, they speak passively, they move sluggishly, and then they wonder why they don't feel powerful. But when you start your day with deliberate, purposeful language, when you stand tall, breathe deeply, and shout into existence who you are and what you will create, you're no longer waiting for life to give you direction. You're commanding it. That's what daily incantations do. They shift your entire identity from the passive to the intentional. And it's not about chanting empty words. It's about connecting language to physiology and belief. You don't say, I am confident, like a wish. You say it like a warrior, declaring truth, while moving, while breathing, like it's already real. And you don't just say it once, you say it over and over until your nervous system adopts it as fact, until your actions begin to mirror it without hesitation, because repetition plus emotion equals certainty, and certainty is the foundation of destiny. Whatever you say with consistency becomes your reality. If you say, I'm always tired, you train your body to feel drained. If you say, I never follow through, you reinforce the habit of quitting. But if you say, I am relentless, I am disciplined, I am the creator of my results, day after day, with energy, with emotion, with belief, you begin to sculpt a new version of yourself, one that no longer reacts to life, but commands it. Boy, this is not about magic, it's not about pretending, it's about the science of conditioning. Every time you speak something with intensity, you fire a network in your brain. Do it again and the network strengthens. Keep doing it and it becomes automatic. That's what identity is, a cluster of reinforced beliefs, and daily incantations give you the power to build that identity on your terms. Instead of defaulting to the stories and labels the world gave you, your words are not just sounds. They are the scripts that shape your thoughts, your emotions, your identity, and ultimately your destiny. When you understand the vocabulary of ultimate success, you realize that every word you speak either pulls you closer to your power or pushes you deeper into limitation. The labels you use define who you believe you are. The language you choose determines how you feel, how you act, and what you expect from life. Victimhood dissolves the moment you take back control of your narrative. Obstacles shrink the moment you focus your language on outcomes. And when you condition yourself daily with incantations, when you speak your vision with passion and certainty, you no longer wait for success to arrive. You live in it, you breathe it, you become it. Success isn't reserved for the lucky or the gifted. It belongs to those who command their inner world. Change your language and you change your life. Because once you master the words you use, you don't just describe your future, you create it.